Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's been a little while since I've done a video. I have been very busy. I have been canning vegetables and I have been making ferments and working my garden and I'm making soaps, I'm making body butters. I've got so many irons in the fire right now, but I wanted to take a break and show you these flowers that I made and show you how I did them. So they're very light and fluffy flowers, and I've just got little pearls and things inside. Some of them I have put some stamens inside of them, and then I've done some two-tones. These have two-tones also in there. So they just make great little junk journal embellishments. There's really not much to them, and it's very easy to do, and you can do it a number of different ways. So I am going to slide these off to the side, and I want to show you what I'm making them out of coffee filters. Now you can use this kind of coffee filter if you want to. This particular one that I've got is very thin, very sheer. I don't know if all of them are, or maybe that's just that brand, I don't know. But what I really like are these coffee filters, the cone style. And again, it might just be the brand, but this is much heavier. It's got a little bit of a texture to it, and so you can do a lot more with them. So you can die cut your flowers if you want to, or you can cut them out by hand. I'm going to show you both ways, and I usually do about 3 layers at a time. So here I've got 3 layers, and I am going to find my glasses. All right, and I'm going to cut 3 at a time just to show you one way to do it. Now, I like to die cut mine, but I understand that not everybody has a die cut machine, so I don't want you to think you're limited. If you don't have a die cut machine, you are not limited. You can still do this. And then, so now I've got 6 layers because that was doubled. So I'm going to take about 2 layers at a time, and if you've seen my channel much, you've probably seen this tutorial before where I fold one in half, or fold the layers in half, find the middle. I kind of just put my thumb at the middle, fold this up about 1/3 of the way, and then fold this back about 1/3 of the way. And then it would look like that if you've done it. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cut in here and around. And if you want your petals to be pointy, you would cut a point right there, and then keeping the point, you would cut here, go around and in just a little. So I just kind of started in and went out a little, and back in a little. All right, and they're not going to come out perfect, and you don't want them to. That's what makes them look like real flowers when we get done. But if you've done it, you should have a 6-petal, actually 2 6-petal flowers to work with. So that gives us 2 to work with. All right, now you can cut the next size. You might want it just a hair smaller. So here's how I would do that one. Fold it into our thirds, front and back. All right, so this time, instead of coming all the way up to the point, I'm going to stop it about right here. I'm going to make my own point way down here. So it's about 1/2 inch down, maybe. And these are just so much easier to work with because this has just like that little bit of texture as opposed to the other one. So here's 2 in a smaller size. I call those medium. So large, medium, and then for the small, I usually don't use but 1. But you do whatever works for you. You know, make it work for you. So this one's going to be even a little bit smaller. And if it doesn't come out that way, I'll cut it down a little more and make it smaller. But I think it will. So I'm cut just 1 here for the tiniest one. See, it's a little bit smaller. And for some reason, I usually end up with 8. That makes a good flower. So I usually have 3 of these, and maybe 1 of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's cut 3 more. Okay, so now I've got 3 large, 3 medium, and 1 small. And if that small is not small enough, I'll make an even smaller one. I'll know when I get ready to do it. Now, this flower right here has got a little bit of a point on the edges of the petals. Not a whole lot, but a little bit of a point. These, excuse me, these are more rounded. These petals are just a little bit more rounded, but you can do it any way you want to. All right, so these are ready for our die. Okay, now these, I went over to my die cut machine, and I've got 4 different sizes, so I can have 2 of each size, and again, I will have 8 pieces. All right, so I'm going to separate these. Okay, so I have 8 of this one that I cut by hand, and I have 8 of this one that I die cut. Now, what I use to color these, you're going to need a little bottle, a spray bottle of water, and I'm using watercolor inks. Now, you can use anything you want to. If you've got distress inks, I've even run the edges across a distress ink pad before and then wet it and let the ink run if you've got the colors that you want. But I've got these watercolor inks, and that's what I'm going to play with. Oh, and by the way, you can also use just a watercolor set. Even just a child's watercolor set will work. These are very, very strongly pigmented, so that's where you're going to get this kind of color. With a just a cute little watercolor set, you might come out with pastels. So according to what you want. Okay, so I'm going to move these guys over for just a minute, and we're going to start with these. All right, so what I do is I just kind of spritz them down. I'm working on a plastic cutting mat kind of thing from Dollar Tree. They come 2 a pack, and they're great for keeping the ink off my desk, hopefully. That's my story. All right, so I've got them pretty wet now. And I think I like this color. It's called medium magenta. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch the outside edges of these petals, and I'm going to let that color run. And because the petals are wet, that color's just going to take off running. All right, see how pretty that is? All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of add some color. And I'm not adding a whole lot of color because I think I'm going to add another color. I think I'm going to do these bicolor, tricolor. We'll see. I'll use 2 or 3 different colors. It doesn't matter. However you want to do it. But for the same flower, I try to stick with the same color families. And all this is going to be one flower, unless I decide it's too much. If it's too much, then I'll leave some out and use them somewhere else, which is just fine. You can do that too. This one didn't want to lay down. And I'm not really squeezing this bottle. I'm barely squeezing it. I'm mainly just bumping it on the end of those petals, because if you squeeze it, you will have ink everywhere. It might be watercolor, but it is a very, very pigmented ink. Thus, I have yellow all over my finger already from earlier. So, all right, I'm going to put the lid back on that. And you know what? This particular brand, I have noticed, it's not easy to get those lids back on. Bria Reese, maybe? All right, so now I'm going to try just a little bit of yellow maybe toward the center. And you can see now the yellow is not going to show up quite as good on these natural colored coffee filters. So if you can do this with white coffee filters, but if you do it with the colored ones, you're going to end up with a little more of a vintage look, and that's kind of what I like. All right, so this pink was called medium magenta. This one is just called pink. It just says pink. So let's see how it looks different. We might just add a little bit of it with that one. So it really, to me, I love when I get the variegation, the colors variegating in there together. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, you know what I mean. It just looks good. And don't feel like you've got to cover the whole petal. If you leave a little bit of the other color, the coffee filter color showing, it's going to look more natural. So, but you just do what you want to. You know what? Have fun with it. There's no rules. No rules. Okay, now, for the hardest part of all is waiting for them to dry. I kid you not, I usually use my heat tool. See what I'm talking about these lids? There you go. I usually apply my heat tool to them, but what I've been doing that helps me out a little bit better, I've just got a cardboard box, and I just dump them all into the cardboard box, and then I've got a fan blowing on them. I don't care if the colors run and mix and whatever, it doesn't matter. All that just doesn't matter. Stick it down in there. Get down in there. Oh, I missed one. And then I've got a fan blowing, and I'm going to go put this cardboard box in front of that fan while I work on the next batch. So this one is going to be, the first batch is going to be drying while I work on the next batch. Now, look at all this color I've got left here. Well, let's take advantage of that, want to? So I'm just going to put, now these are the ones that I did with a die cut machine, and I'm just going to put them in here just any old way. I had a couple left over, or I might stick a couple other ones in here just for good measure. Who knows? Who knows what all, is that 2 or 1? That's 1. Okay. So there's some, see, ink on my desk. I knew it. I knew it. I know me. Yes, I can make a mess with the best of them, can't I? All right, get back up here. Now, I'm going to take my spray, try to move them a little more toward the middle, so I hopefully won't get any wet. Now I'm going to go ahead and wet these down. Even though they've already got some ink on them, they're going to start running now. That ink will start running. Okay, so we still got a bunch of pinks here. So how about we add some purple? I think that'd be pretty. All right, let's try. And I think this is a dark, dark purple, so I'm going to have to be careful with it. Maybe not overdo it, but just add a little purple in there just for something different. And if it doesn't run the way you want to, then it's probably not wet enough. So make sure that it really needs to be saturated, even though I know it's going to take it longer to dry. And like I said, that's the hardest part, is waiting on them to dry, because you'd be so anxious to see what they're going to look like. Do note that when you are using watercolors, the colors are darker when they're wet. They're going to dry a little bit lighter. And if you wanted purple and you had these inks, but you wanted a lavender, just dilute it. You know, just take this purple or whatever purple you've got, or any of the colors, and dilute them. You can do that just as easily. And I am lid challenged. I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody else has had this trouble with these bottles, but they, all right, now since I've got the purple on there, I'm going to actually dilute them just a little bit more. I want it to run. I want it to be happy and just mix all in there really, really good. All right, now, guess what we get to do? Wait for these to dry. Yes, we do. We have to wait for them to dry. All right, so I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to come back when everything's dry and show you the fun part, the really fun part. Ooh, how pretty is that? Oh, I forgot to tell you, too. If you've got glimmer mist in any color or whatever, this is just a sparkly spray. It's kind of got a mica powder in it. You can also spray these guys down a little bit, and when they dry, they're going to have a little bit of that sparkly, you know, a little bit of sparkle to them. All right, let's let them dry, and I'll be right back. All right, I've removed them all from my work surface, and I've got all these colors left here. So I'm just going to take this other kind of filter that I had laying there, and I'm just going to kind of soak up these colors, because if you are a junk journaler, you can think of 100 uses for these coffee filters. I mean, I can make more flowers out of them. I could make pockets out of them. I could make envelopes out of them. Anything in the world. So I'm just going to sop up all those colors like so, and then I'm going to let that dry, and that'll just be something else. I'm working with some coffee filter. Now this is the other one, the thinner one, but I already had these pieces with some dried inks on it, and I'm working with these, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, you know, if you haven't seen my other video, if you're new to my channel, I may have went way too fast on how I cut these. So I'm going to show you one more time. I just roughly cut out a circle. You can see it's not perfectly round. It's okay. Fold it in half. I put my fingernail about where I think the middle of that fold is, about right there. And I fold this side straight up about a third of the way, and then this one goes straight back, and it matches up, match it up right here, match all those lines up partially. Now you can see that one ended up a little bit bigger, so I'm going to adjust my first fold so that they're roughly even, so that when you cut them out and you cut in about a ½ inch up from the bottom, and you can make a point or you can go around. I'm making it fat and I'm going back in, so that when you do open it up, you end up with those six petals. And every now and then one of my petals doesn't get cut apart, and I just go in there and snip it apart. You see, now we've got 6 petals. So I've got 2 of that size, 2, 2, and 2. So I'm going to do this one different while I'm still waiting on those other ones to dry. I'm going to show you a different way you can do this. If you have some distress inks, of course I really should have demoed this with the stronger paper, because this paper is a little flimsy. And see how that one came out? It's all wonky looking, but trust me, when you put them all together, it'll be just fine. If you ever took a real flower petal apart, you'd see that they are not perfect, and you don't want it to be perfect. But if you've got some distress inks, that's what we're going to work with now. Okay, I think I'm going to take a little bit of this Rusty Hinge, and this one is Walnut Stain, and I'm just using a blending brush. You can use whatever that you have. And what I would do is I would maybe put some of the lighter color toward the inside, maybe not all the way. I'm just kind of dusting it just a little bit with the color, not a whole lot of color. And then I would take the darker color, which always seems to look good on the edges of the petals, and I'm going to try to get it. But like I said, this paper is so delicate, it's hard. I should have got the other one. It would have been stiffer. And you know, you don't have to do this with coffee filters. You can do it with regular scrapbooking paper if you want to. See, now I've got a couple of colors there, but it's darker on the outside edges. All right, so you can, this is something else you can do. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and finish these. If you have one of these foamy mats, this is so much easier. It's just a foamy, it's about 1/4 of an inch thick, but it's just a foamy thingamajiggy. Dollar Tree again, I believe. I've had it for a long time, so it's got ink and paint and glitter and stuff all over it. And then you'll need some kind of an embossing tool. If you don't have anything like this, you can use the end of a pin. Let me show you. These work really good for me. This is where I started before I got my little tools. This is a jelly roll glitter pen, gel roll pen, but the caps are very soft and very round. So if you have any kind of a cap that's round like that, you can use that also. Or you can get these. They don't cost much, I don't believe. All right, so what I'm going to do, you have to decide, do you want your petals to rotate up? See, these are going up. Well, actually, all these right here that I've just done are coming up. And the reason, and you can make them go down too, but the reason I like to make them go up is because it looks more like a cabbage rose when it's done. So to make your petals go up, you're going to take a tool, and I'm just kind of, I've got more tutorials on these kind of things. If you've been on my channel, you know, and you can kind of go in the middle, and look, that one petal's ready to go. He is just raring to go. When you get to a bigger petal, you can switch to a larger size if you want to. What I like about this is when you go around these petals, it wrinkles that up. It causes wrinkles in that edge that almost looks like the veins of the flower. I don't know, can you see those little wrinkles right there and right there? Maybe you can see them. And then, oh, I'm in the middle and I'm going out toward the petals from the middle out, and it just kind of draws it all up. If you say, well, that's too much, well, it'll go right back down. No worries. All right, so this is how I do it, and this foamy mat makes things so easy. Notice I'm not holding on to the flower. If you hold on to it, you will tear it. So you just kind of let it go wild and crazy, and I'm just kind of like doing a little circle on each petal, kind of like that. Draw it in a little bit. Let's see, this one, I think I'm going to go back to this size. The smaller the petals, the smaller the tool to get more design. Now I could use this one, but let me show you. Say I used this great big one on that petal right there. You see what's going to happen? It cups up a little bit, but it's mainly flat. We want more than that. So I'm going to use this, and see, I'm getting those edges to curl up with me, and those little wrinkles are in there. And now that one's ready to go. Okay, so all these petals are ready to go. All I need to do is separate them back by size. Here's my two big ones. And remember, some of them were kind of wonky looking. Trust me, by the time we get done, they're going to look so good. Now, the only thing you don't want to do is you don't want to stack your petals right on top. You want to stagger them just a little bit. So, see what I'm talking about? So if this petal's here, you don't want this petal on top of it. We're just going to stagger just a little bit, stagger. All right, now these look like my next two mediums. So I'm going to stagger that down in there. And it's a very quick and easy, well, I won't say it's as quick when you got to wait for them to dry, those other guys. Now, if you're smart and you do it one day, you ink them one day, and then you come out here the next day to do your flowers, then you're smart, because then you won't have to wait for them to dry. Uh-oh, it stuck to my finger. So what I'm doing is I'm just stacking them in here according to their sizes. Now I'm down to the two smaller, and I'm going to stuff that in there. See, it's looking more and more like a rose. And then here is the smallest, and I'm going to stuff it down there. And sometimes I take my stylist again that I was using, and so I go right down in the middle. Well, you can't see that, can you? I'm pushing right down in the middle on the mat, and when I do, I fluff it. So I'm holding it down in the middle. Get my hand out of the way. And I just kind of fluff, 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 fluff. Get everything where it needs to be, everything where you want it to be. And there is a very vintage looking pinkish, brownish, orangish, whatever flower. Now, for the center, you can do anything in the world you want to do. I do have these glass pearls, and if I can find a pearl that I like really, really well, then I might use it. This peachy looking one, ooh, that's pretty. Okay, decision made. I didn't even think about it. I was going to tell you, I also use sometimes just a little pile of these seed beads, and I like that look too. All right, but for this one, I'm going to use some, what's this glue called? You know what I'm talking about. Fabri-Tac. There we go. Or Fabrifix. This one might be Fabrifix. But they're all the same. And I know you can't see what I'm doing down in that hole, but I just put a little puddle, big enough glue to not only hold this, to not only hold this pearl in there, but I want it to squeeze out a little on the edges. Let's see if I can pull that back so you can see. Maybe you can see. So the glue, and then, the pearl, and then there's a little bit around the edges, which just gives you a little extra glue. And then you can take a glitter or not. You don't have to do this, but I usually just sprinkle a little bit of some kind of a fine glitter down in there. I don't even dump it out till it's dry. Once it's dry, we'll take that glitter out of there. So let me get this up and see if it'll focus so you can see that. Now this one is not as colorful because remember we started with muted colors. So let's get back to our other ones. Okay, so the first batch I think is dry. You got to wait till they're crunchy. Can you hear that? If they're not completely dry, they are not going to hold their shape. That feels dry. Yeah, okay, good. I think it's dry. Now, see how vivid these colors are? This is the watercolor ink. And so, yes, they really show up good. Okie dokie. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to go around these petals. I'm using a bigger thing here for this one, because that's going to be the bottom petal. Well, hello. It's going to be the bottom petal, and I kind of want it to stay, I don't want it to cup up too much, so I didn't do a whole lot with that. Now I'm going to switch over, even though I'm on the same size. This is another large. I'm going to switch over and do this because I want it to have a little bit more curve to it. All right, so you can see how I'm doing this. There's nothing to it. Do your middle if you want to draw them in a little bit further. Now this is the next size down. So I'm doing the outside petals, but it's laying flat and I want it to curve in a little. So here I go again in the middle, out to a few of the petals to pull that in. That one got bent, no problem. Wait till you put it all together. It is a-okay. All right, pull them all in. See, that one's good. All right, so I'm going to finish these. Now, just my personal opinion, this coffee filter works so much better than the other one. There's just a little bit of a, you can see a little bit of a texture, a little grain in there, and I just like it. And it forms its shape better. Okay, come on. To me, it just holds its shape better. All right, so there's our bottom. And here is another large one, and I'm going to stagger those petals. So for this one, we had 3 larges. I'll stagger those petals. I love that yellow down in the middle, which didn't seem to show up much at all when we were doing the dyeing process, but now it's very pretty. All right, let's put that down in the middle. Okay, see what a beautiful rose this is going to be? Put you, get down in there, and I'm going to do this one next, and I'm going to do this one last but not least. And I'm just poking it down in the middle like we did, and I'm going to give it a little fluff. Oh, I think it's so pretty. And that looks so much like a real rose. It really does. Look at that. All right, so all I got to do is add something pretty in the center. All right, I'm going to do this one with seed beads just so you can see the difference and see how I do it. So I'm using the same glue, and I know you can't see down in that hole. I can actually barely see down in there myself. But I'm just putting a little puddle of glue, a little smaller than a dime, and I'm going to take some seed beads, and I'm going to just sprinkle them. And I kind of want them to mound up a little bit. So I usually take a tool, and I go in there from the outside edges, and I pull those seed beads in toward the middle, trying to make sure that every seed bead gets a little glue on it. Just kind of stick it all down there. I'm pushing down in the middle a little, and all right. Then you can let it dry completely before you flip it over, or you can go ahead and flip it to get your extras out, because what's in there, what's going to stay is pretty much going to stay. But there's a few that are lost down in the petals, which is okay. So anyway, guys, that is how I make these little things. I hope I've inspired you today to go out and get creative. Give it a try. And do try white too on the coffee filters. Try them. You'll get much more vivid colors if that's what you're wanting. So anyway, thanks for watching. Have a blessed and wonderful day. Bye-bye.